The first time the rain reversed itself, most people stared upward, certain they were misreading a trick of light. Droplets peeled away from puddles, rose in trembling beads, and threaded back through the air like silver insects returning to an invisible hive. Within hours, the clouds turned transparent, as if they had been carved out of sapphire glass, revealing dark trenches and luminous kelp forests floating far above ordinary weather. Those fathomless tracks were the sky oceans, and they had begun to leak. Elman Jar, newly apprenticed to the Guild of Plumbers, stared at the spectacle from the window of Master Toburn's workshop. She had spent the morning learning the proper torque for tightening copper joints, mundane work for keeping household pipes from moaning at night. Now she watched entire rivers heave themselves upward, abandoning gutters and storm drains that suddenly lay dry. A single question pounded louder than any water hammer. Who fixes a broken sky? Guild doctrine said almost nothing about celestial hydraulics. The few ancient treatises in the library used allegory more than instruction, speaking of philosophic siphons and oracular gaskets. Yet Master Tobrun, cheeks smudged with grease, merely drummed his fingers and spoke as though the matter were obvious. If liquid travels contrary to its nature, he told Elman, pressure has reversed, which means a seal has failed. Someone must climb and close it before the whole apparatus flips. The apparatus? Elman repeated. You mean the heavens? Only a system, Tobrun said. He handed her a coil of rope woven with brass threads and 3 cylindrical plugs carved from luminous teak. Systems can be mended, even divine ones, if you keep your hands steady. News spread. Upward rain was more than meteorological marvel. It was flood writ in reverse. Citadels that floated on buoyant stone, formerly so high they could be reached only by windship, found their moorings, tugged by outgoing currents. The great anchor chains that held them above the provinces groaned. Metal pulled taut, threatened to snap like corded nerves. If they broke, the sky citadels would be carried farther and farther until their life orbs dimmed and the people aboard were stranded in the unbreathable thinness beyond the blue. It took 3 days for the Council of Clouds to send a formal petition to the ground. They required hydrokinetic technicians. The Guild, unused to such lofty attention, dispatched a team of veterans riding the last functioning Zeppelin. Elman was not on the list. Apprentices were meant to polish wrenches, not climb the world's tallest ladder. She signed the manifest anyway when the masters were busy arguing girth ratios. By dawn she was crouched in the Zeppelin's cargo bay, hidden among crates of pressure gauges and gasket wax, praying no one would discover her until it was too late to turn around. During ascent she peered through an observation slit. The ground shrank beneath quilted fog. Above, roiling sheets of water shifted like continents. When wind parted those sheets, she saw shapes. Barnacled cliffs, coral-like pagodas, serpentine shadows that might have been whales. The notion that oceans hung overhead had always seemed mythic, as distant as the stars. Seeing them leak, shorn of privacy, gave the world a frightening transparency, as though all hidden machinery were abruptly laid bare. The Zeppelin docked with Arathene, foremost of the floating citadels. Its anchor chain was as wide as a boulevard, disappearing into a misty chasm below. Fountains designed to pour downward now frothed backward, drawing mist up through marble basins and along aqueducts that emptied into the sky. Children laughed until they realized that laughter did not slow erosion. Sandstone sculptures carved over centuries were already sloughing away under the suction of reversed flow. Guild veterans met with architects, argued over schematics few understood, and eventually decided to descend by anchor chain to locate whatever celestial pipe had ruptured. Elman stood on the periphery, trying to hear without being noticed. At last Master Tobrun spotted her. His expression pinned her more effectively than a clamp. "Stowaway," he said in a voice that carried. "Explain." Elman expected to be sent back. Instead, she blurted, "I read the prayer valves of Chanter's manual. I know the theory." "Prayer valves?" Journeyman Fesk scoffed. "We need practical skill, not hymnals." But Tobrun's gaze shifted to the plugs hanging from her belt-luminous teak, a material chosen for its buoyancy in etheric currents. Though she had taken them without explicit permission, the very fact that she had taken them suggested readiness, or at least desperation. Sometimes those were identical. "The heavens are leaking through more than one fissure," Tobrin said after a long breath. "We'll need every hand. Apprentice Jar joins Team 3. Pitons were hammered into the anchor chain's links, and ropes dropped into vapor pillars that smelled faintly of salt. Elmin clipped her harness, heart throbbing like a piston. She descended alongside Fesk and two journeyman welders, boots scraping oxidized iron, sky above and below switching positions in her mind until she no longer knew which direction signified fall. They passed under Erethine's belly. Girders appeared warped, as if some giant hand had seized the city and tried to wring it dry. Water, or anti-water as someone called it, streamed upward between cobbles. Elmin felt droplets brush her cheeks on their way past. They carried coolness that seemed unworldly, a temperature belonging to the middle of night. Several hundred yards down the chain, where music from Erethine's plazas faded to a low thunder, Fesk halted. He pointed at a swirling vortex that flashed turquoise and violet, no larger than a manhole, yet fierce enough to bend nearby links inward. Liquid from rivers on the ground must be traveling through invisible conduits, funneled back into the sky ocean through that puncture. Surrounding air vibrated, metal filaments stood on end. Elmin's teeth hurt. "That's no mere crack," Fesk muttered. "It's a pressure node." "How did it appear inside anchor iron?" Elmin remembered lines from one of the allegorical treatises. "Where the world nails pierce the firmament, corrosion breeds if songs are forgotten." Poetic, but perhaps literally true. Anchor chain, world nail, same notion. The Citadel's hymnal schedule had been interrupted by civic budget cuts last year, according to an Erethin bureaucrat she met on the dock. Perhaps maintenance of the intangible required music as much as metal. She spoke the conjecture. Fesk rolled his eyes, yet the welders shrugged. They had seen stranger. Regardless of origin, the vortex had to be sealed. The senior welder sprayed a foam of quickset alloy along the chain's interior groove, hoping to narrow the cavity. It sizzled, hardened to mercury-gray glass, and shattered instantly as reverse pressure yanked it inward. Shards pinged off helmets, whirred into the clouds above. "Wrong approach," the welder said, voice small. Elmin unclipped one of the teak plugs. She recalled Master Tobrin's lecture. Teak imbued with skycryl resin could attune to directional flow, latching like a barnacle onto any leak if given time. The catch was proximity. You had to touch the rim of the wound. "I'm lighter," Elmin said, volunteering what nobody asked. "Lower me to the node." Fesk cursed, but tied an auxiliary rope around her waist. She repelled until ozone prickled her skin. The vortex's pull flipped her braids skyward. Colors inside shifted like oil on water, suggesting another universe glowing through a peephole. She set the plug against the rim. It vibrated, searching for polarity. For an awful second, she wondered if it would reject this sight as too unstable. Then the wood elongated, grain twisting, edges branching like roots gripping moist soil. It sealed with a muffled clunk. Upward torrent dwindled to droplets. Gravity reasserted itself in local territory. Stray beads now fell decorously downward, pattering against iron before rolling into the clouds below. Elmin climbed back, lungs throbbing. Fesk slapped her shoulder, embarrassed but grateful. They reported partial success to Erethine via speaking tube. Tobrin's reply crackled. 2 more breaches identified along the eastern mooring. Move. By the time Team 3 reached the next leak, day had blurred into luminous dusk. The sky ocean glowed from within, an aurora refracted through kilometers of water. Fish darted, visible silhouettes as though projected onto a planet-sized screen. Elmin felt small, yet she also felt part of the mechanism now, not an observer, but a cog. The second breach sprouted from a bronze globe embedded beneath an access platform, an ancient flow balancer the architects had copied without understanding. Elmin suspected negligence more than sabotage. They patched it using her last teak plug. The journey toward the third leak continued, feet numb, hands blistered. It lay near the chain's junction with ground, that place called Bottom Link, where massive cradles anchored steel into bedrock. Villagers had gathered, staring up at the waterfall that rode skyward. Fields were parched. Wells sank into hollowness. They prayed for return of common rain even as farmers' children chased leftover puddles as if they were animals that might run away. At Bottom Link, they inspected a fractured plate, too wide for a single teak plug. Welders deployed an expandable bulkhead, a contraption of overlapping pedals, but just as they positioned it, a tremor rippled along the chain. Above, Erythene's silhouette lurched, spires listing. Monster waves in the sky ocean slammed invisible shores. The final anchor on the opposite side of the citadel, rumored weakened, must have yielded. Fesk's eyes widened. If Erythene drifts, tension here will increase tenfold. This plate will tear open like parchment. Guild headquarters signaled by a flare, emergency recall. Yet if the breach widened during withdrawal, suction might peel entire villages from the earth. Elmin considered the equation she barely understood. Pressure differential, area, flow velocity, mathematics blurred behind adrenaline, but a single clarity emerged. A direct seal was impossible now. Another method equalizing pressure might suffice. "What are you thinking, apprentice?" Fesk demanded. "That we let the sky ocean keep part of the water?" she said. "Divert rest elsewhere so forces rebalance? Where? We have no reservoir large enough." She looked at the ground. Parched fields, cracked cisterns, dusty canals. Empty capacity lay everywhere, waiting to be filled in the correct direction. "We remake the drains to accept reversal," she said. "Turn villages into anchor points. Share the load." Such civil replumbing would require days the Citadel did not possess. Except, there were already drainstorm sewers unused since the event began. If they widened those and installed ducted vents, upward pull could be distributed across thousands of little leaks, rather than one catastrophic fissure. Risky, theoretical, mad. Fesk, to her surprise, grinned. Madness beats certainty of doom. They radioed Tobrin, who relayed to civic engineers on Erythene and municipal foremen on the ground. Tools were scarce, but desperation lubricated bureaucracy quicker than oil. Villagers brought pickaxes, sheet metal, tarps. Welders instructed them to knock out culvert caps, install flexible sleeves pointing skyward. Every improvised spout would bleed a measured stream from earth into sky, reducing strain on any single point. During frantic hours, Elmine organized teams, her apprentice badge irrelevant now. She drew chalk circles where holes should widen, muttered ratios she half-invented. Fesk adjusted them, adding constants. Together they plotted an accidental symphony of counterlinks. Night settled. Lanterns chased shadows away from Bottom Link. At the main fracture, they installed the expandable bulkhead again, this time programming microvents along its pedals to sync with the network of village drains. When a horn told them remote vents were in place, they locked the pedals, activated the regulator. At first nothing changed. Elmine feared miscalculation. Then water from the ground rose, but slower, gentler, like a tide retreating from violence. The bulkhead held. Pressure monitors clipped to the chain's flank glowed amber instead of red. Somewhere far above, Erythene's list began to correct. Citizens steadied toppled statues. Sky whales sang vibrations humans felt as eerie calm. Morning arrived, transparent as crystal. Ordinary rain, the comfortable downward kind, resumed in erratic drizzles. Farmers lifted palms, laughed, then wept. Excess water still flowed upward through vented drains, yet it felt negotiated, a covenant rather than theft. When Zeppelins returned to retrieve the guild team, sun rose behind Erythene, turning its spires into silhouettes carved from dawn. The chain thrummed contentedly. Elmin smelled tar, sweat, and strange perfume of sky salt. Council members requested an audience. She expected reprimand for unauthorized participation. Instead, they offered her a sky citizenship certificate, granting right of passage along the upper trade routes. Master Tobrin, standing beside her, accepted with a nod, but intervened when they named her savior. "Savior, no," he corrected. "She is a plumber. Definition stands." During the banquet that followed, Elmin ventured onto Erythene's east promenade. Anchor chains sloped into clear air. Above them, Water refracted sunlight into cathedral beams. She leaned against a parapet and tried to picture interior pipes of heavens stretching beyond mathematical horizon. Somewhere, countless valves awaited maintenance by whoever dared to climb. Fesk joined her, holding mugs of sky ale. Engineers figured what caused the initial rupture, he said. A mining probe in the ocean core, drilled by cartel profiteers. They struck a mausoleum reef they didn't believe existed. Pressure spike punched downward into the anchor. Can we plug the probe site? Elman asked. In theory, but the citadels lack craft that swims so deep. He glanced at her belt, now empty of teak plugs. Guild might design something. You've given them new confidence. She tasted bitterness in ale, sweet afterward. The world had changed. Each sip carried flavor of risk. We'll need more apprentices, she said, and better books. Tobrin appeared behind them, as though conjured by commentary. Library budget already tripled, he said, producing a sheaf of vellum. You will help revise the manuals. Start by describing what you felt when the teak merged with that first wound. Elman accepted the pages. Her handwriting was cramped and tentative, betraying leftover fear. Yet sentences took shape, mechanics braided with metaphor, because metaphor had been truer than fact. She wrote of upward rains sounding like reversed applause, of vortices tasting like iron and violets, of cities held to earth by cords you could pluck like harpstrings to test their faith. Weeks passed in restoration. She commuted between ground and sky, teaching crews to maintain distributed vents while singing the resonance hymns that prevented invisible rust. Whenever she crossed mid-solitude, she felt the sideways tug of water seeking its new equilibrium, a constant reminder that nature was not a dictator but a negotiator, and plumbers were its translators. One evening, after a successful inspection, she rode a cargo lift alone. Stars sprinkled both above and below, reflections off Sky Ocean's underbelly. Halfway down, the lift jolted. An alarm blinked, not critical, but insistent. Elamine exited onto an unfamiliar catwalk welded during emergency days. There she discovered a hairline bead of moisture trembling in indecision along a seam. She smiled, drew from her pouch a pocket plug no larger than her thumb. As she sealed the micro-breach, she hummed a tune, half prayer, half blueprint. The droplet quivered, then vanished, its journey undone or, perhaps, fulfilled elsewhere. Balance restored, she returned to the lift. Below, village lanterns traced new maps across fields, where shoots had begun to sprout again. Above, whales drifted through translucent trenches, barnacled flukes scattering constellations. Between these worlds she swung as quietly as a wrench in a practiced hand, doing what plumbers had always done, keeping flow honest. Whether in kitchens, king's fountains, or oceans stitched to the dome of heaven. And because of her, people learned to look at gutters not just as drainage, but as conversation. Every flush, every raindrop, every prayer sent through pipe or hymn might rise or fall depending on which side needed it more. They spoke of returning favor to favor, flow to flow, never again assuming gravity was simple or destiny limited to a single direction. Upward rain would come again someday. The treaties of pressure were living documents, signatures written in vapor. When it did, the world would not gape in terror, but pick up tools, gaskets, ropes, songs, and meet the change halfway. For a novice had shown them that the sky was full of leaks, and more importantly, possibilities, waiting to be fit with the right thread, tightened gently until the hum of water matched the pulse of the heart.